Hello everyone, it's me, Philip Boelter from Boelter Design Co. And thanks for joining me for another tutorial on how to create some fun watercolors. Today I'm going to show you some techniques on how to create a nice landscape featuring the Palos Verdes Lighthouse, also known as the San Vicente Lighthouse, which means something very special to me that you'll find out a little bit more on in the middle of this video. So right now, I'm just going to begin this painting with a little bit of wetting on the background. And what this photo has, it has a beautiful sky, has a nice cliff, a beautiful lighthouse, and for this initial wetting, we're just going to do the top and focus on the sky. And then we're going to move into the ocean and then the cliff. And then we're going to follow that up with the bushes, and we're going to finish with the lighthouse and a palm tree and a little home next to the lighthouse. So let's all just zen out and enjoy painting something together. Grab your paints and get started. So like I said, I'm just wetting this background so we can bring in some color, and I'm using a synthetic Princeton Heritage brush. It's a 1/2 inch, and you can pick up the brush at pretty much any art store near your house probably. And also I should mention that I'm doing just a small 5x7 on Arches 140-pound watercolor paper. I typically like to use them on blocks, but this was one of the last pieces that I had on the block, and I decided to cut it in half so I could do a couple watercolor landscapes. So right now I'm just taking some cadmium yellow, and I've been wetting a lot of my colors so I can just kind of work with them all at once, but I'm just going to take some of this cadmium yellow and bring it into the sky. We're going to kind of make this a little bit more perhaps like an evening, or perhaps like a sunset. So I'm going to take some cobalt blue. I also have some of this like caput mortem violet. That's right next to my blue, and I'm just going to kind of blend these all together. I also have a magnesium blue that I like to bring into these, and just bring in the colors. Sometimes you want to make sure your palette's comfortable and doesn't move around while you grab these colors, so I kind of have my napkin underneath it, just kind of keep it steady while I grab these colors and bring them into the sky. And you can just have fun with this. You don't necessarily need to worry about keeping these colors separated, because with watercolor you kind of want them to just blend together. And while we created that water background in the very beginning, it's going to help these colors blend all together. Just kind of continue bringing these colors in. So while we bring in these colors, I'm going to mention why this lighthouse has a little bit of meaning to me. And we're going to make this, I'm going to tell you the story while we make this next little wetness for the ocean. So I really like this lighthouse because I actually had proposed to my wife over here. So we really like to come to this spot every now and then. It's just a little bit over here off of Palos Verdes in the South Bay. And if you're familiar with the South Bay or Hermosa Beach where I live, Palos Verdes isn't too far. And I just came off and proposed right here in front of this lighthouse. So it has very much a lot of meaning to me, and that's why I wanted to paint it and show you guys how to do some techniques with this. So I'm just bringing in some of this magnesium blue. It kind of separates the ocean from the sky, where I used some cobalt and the cadmium yellow. And just as it comes down closer to you, it's going to become a little bit darker, and just subtly bring in some of this dark cobalt blue. And it's going to come right on the edge right here. And when I make these, I either like to come off the page onto the tape, um, but sometimes with the tape, it leaves little marks against the edge of this, and sometimes I don't really like that, and I like to have my paint come over the line. So when I drew the 5x7, I like the paint kind of come off, and that way the tape won't leave that mark. And I can either trim it or I can mat it and it looks fine. But I kind of like having this kind of rustic look to these watercolors. It kind of just adds a little bit of like touch to it, you know? So just continue bringing in these colors of cobalt blue, magnesium blue. I like to have the magnesium blue a little bit further in the background because it just kind of sits there against the horizon and has a nice color against that cadmium yellow sky. And I'm going to bring in some violet down here in the bottom. Just we want to make this a little bit darker as it comes closer to us. And this ocean right here is coming against this little cliff that we're gonna draw in. And I like to just do a little bit touches here and there and let the water push the paint into each other and make it blend itself. And you can bring in a little bit of purple up into the sky, and you want to leave a little bit of this whiteness because that will be the reflections of the waves, and you don't want to make it all blue. So make sure you just kind of like bring it in subtly using some horizon lines and keep some of that white. So I let this dry for a little bit because I didn't want the colors of the cliff to blend into my ocean. And you're going to want to do that. If you work too much on this at once, you will find that the colors are going to blend, and that is completely fine to some artists that like that look. I kind of like to be a little bit more patient and let the water dry a little bit before I come back into it. And I probably only let this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes before I came back into it. I think that gave it enough where the crisp edges of the cliff and the ocean will be fine to work. And right now I am doing another wetting for the cliff, so all these colors that I bring into this cliff are gonna start to blend together. And though I'm using this 1/2 inch brush, if you have anything larger, that is completely fine to bring. You'll probably have an easier job if you wet this with a 1 inch brush or a 2 inch brush. And unfortunately, I didn't have one on me right now, so I'm just going to use my 1/2 inch, and it works perfectly fine for these little 5x7 landscapes. And I'm not wetting the top part where the bushes and the lighthouse are going to be. I'm just going to do the majority of this cliff. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use I can never pronounce this, but a quinacridone, quinacridone gold. I'm going to use some cadmium yellow, and I might use some cadmium orange in this with some raw sienna. And if you have a burnt sienna, you can also bring that in. So right now I just blended some cadmium yellow with the quinacridone gold, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, which is my fault, and I'm really sorry. Leave me a comment and tell me if I'm saying it right or wrong. But anyway, so here's some of that cadmium orange, and these colors are just going to start to blend together, and they're going to create this wonderful cliffside. And let that water just kind of blend these colors together. And I like to keep a little bit of the dry color on these edges, so I don't want it too wet along the edges because I want it I want to have a bold contrast against that ocean. And you can leave a little bit of the white between the ocean and the cliff, and that will keep it a little bit of a highlight along that edge, which is something that I like to do. So right now I brought in some raw sienna and using some of that gold and cadmium yellow. And with the raw sienna, I'm trying to bring in some of that dirt and some of these shadows. You can continually just go back and forth, and we're just trying to make some shadows in this cliff, and you can, with these cliffs, you can just kind of have fun. You don't necessarily have to be too precise with anything. We're going to let these colors just do their work. And I just work back and forth. I like to grab any colors that I feel would be great for this, and if something happens where I'm like not too happy with a color that I brought in, I'll either use a little bit of more water to tone it down, and then I'll bring in a color that I think is a better fit for that area. So with some of these darker spots, I'm going to use some of this gold so I don't use too much of the raw sienna, and just go back and forth. And if you have any other colors to bring into this cliff, feel free to. Some burnt sienna would look great. Some red would look really nice. More orange if you have it. Right now I'm just kind of taking my brush and trying to make these little areas have little shadows, because these are all little rocks here. You can do that with your raw sienna or burnt sienna. The more shadows you start to place on top, the more it's going to look like a cliff. Right now I'm taking some sap green and my raw sienna, and I'm just going to mix those together, and it's going to create a nice greenish gold for some bushes along the edges, because there's going to be some bushes that are coming up off the side of this cliff. Looks like this cliff had a landscape back in the day. A landslide, sorry. Had a little landslide. And what happened is now all these bushes are starting to grow on top. And some of them haven't even formed yet. And just continually take some sap green. The darker they go, it just shows more shadow. You can have some lightness, and remember, this is gonna dry a little bit lighter. So as it dries, you can come back into it later and bring in some more darkness over it for more shadows. And it always looks a little bit more realistic when you start to bring in shadow. And just continually work some sap green, raw sienna between the gold and the yellow. And look at and use your reference image as you work back and forth. If you feel like you've gotten to a good part and you can take a break and let this dry a bit, feel free to. If you want to continue working, let the wet and the water work together to bring more of this blending together, go for it. I wanted to continue working and let some of these colors blend a lot more, and I wanted to bring in some more cadmium orange and make this a little bit more like the sun was hitting this cliff from the opposite side. Plus, this was a really rich in orange and yellow cliff, and that's what Palos Verdes is known for, is its beautiful cliffs. And if you ever have a chance to come out to the South Bay, I recommend you make a trip along the coast and see this lighthouse, and you can go to Terranea Resort. And sometimes you'll even see a painter over there, and they'll be painting it along the seaside cliffs, and It's always a great spot for a picnic. When I proposed to my wife here at this cliff, I I told her, hey, let's take a picture. Let's stop off and we'll take a picture as we were driving over to watch some summer concerts. And what was great about it was she knew I loved taking photographs of this lighthouse. So when we pulled over, I started taking some photographs, and in the distance, she saw something that looked like maybe a little setup, like someone was getting married or something. But what she didn't know is when we started walking over there, it had a sign, and she read the sign. It said, "Be my bliss," and forever. And she quickly realized it was for her, and I got down on one knee. And now this lighthouse is going to be forever ours. And that's just a little story about a little bit more of that story of why this lighthouse means so much to me and my wife. And maybe you have a photo or a place of a place that you really like, and you want to make a landscape painting of it, and hopefully some of these techniques can help you maybe make a watercolor of that, and you can give it to someone special, and it's a perfect gift. You can frame it, you can put it on the wall, and it'll be perfect. And so all I've been doing is coming back and forth with some darker tones and a little bit less water when I mix these colors, just to bring in some more of that paint and less watered down pigment. So right now I'm just continually bringing in some sap green and raw sienna, and I'm gonna make some of these bushes. And I didn't initially wet that background this time, because this is what I like to call painting uh, on dry. Some people, they paint wet on wet. This is, I guess, I just term it like wet on dry. And right now I'm just making some bushes, and there's going to be some bushes between the cliff and the lighthouse, and you can just come back and forth between, your greens that you have, if you have a hooker green, or if you have um, some other browns that you like to bring into these bushes. They're perfect for this. And this is where you want to contrast the top part of this cliff between the ocean, the sky, and the cliff. This is going to be the focal point. And as you continually bring in some of that green to the top, you can come down back into this bottom part because now it's a little bit drier, and you can contrast these background greens with some darker greens to make the bushes along the cliffs. And this is just a little fun, little fun part along the cliff. It's like the landslide went into the ocean and some of these bushes fell along with it and continued to grow over the years. And I'm just using a Winsor Newton round 1 when I do this. And I'm just bringing these bushes in with a round 1. So I went from my Princeton 1/2 inch that I used quite a bit on getting some of the background, the cliff, and now I'm working with a round 1. And if you have a synthetic brush, those work perfectly. This is a you could use any brush at this moment for these. I like these round brushes though. You can use a smaller brush or a bigger brush. I'm just going back and forth with some darker greens. I kind of want to make this corner a little bit darker than the other side. I'm just going to mix a little bit of the cadmium yellow. Kind of make some of these darker spots up here with some of that yellow. I'm going to use some of this hooker green. These are just tiny little bushes. It kind of brings the foreground a little bit closer. The background's always going to be a little bit lighter than the foreground. Just make these little bushes along the edge of the cliff. Bring some bushes down into this, and bring some bushes along the little edges over here. Maybe a little bushes on the cliff over here. After some of these bushes have dried, you can come back in here with some darker paint. And I don't mix too much water with this if I want to keep it a little bit darker. I just go back and forth between my greens and come in here and make some shadows with the green. And they won't blend too much because there's not too much water down. So you don't want too much water in these dry parts. We want these very bold and very dark. And you just go back and forth, but don't bring too much darkness and leave some of that light that you already spent time in the background. Don't go over everything. think we're almost done with the bushes. I'm just adding a little tiny bits here and there just to bring in this foreground from the background. Now it's starting to get a little bit more dimension between this cliff and where we're standing. Now, what I'm going to do now is there's a little house in the distance right next to this lighthouse, and I'm mixing some alizarin crimson, some cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, and I'm just trying to get a Spanish roof color for this little house. Just continually mix these colors until you can find the right color, and once you find that right color, sometimes it just takes patience to find this before you just throw down any color onto that roof. You kind of want to make sure you have the right color that you like. Watercolor is all about patience. Okay, I think this is the right color, so we're just going to go into this roof. I'm going to add a little bit of water. It's hard with these little round brushes to get a lot of water on, but kind of just have to go back and forth between your water cup and your paint. I'm just gonna slowly paint this roof in. You can leave a little bits of white in there. There'll be little highlights if you leave little bits of white. And this roof is going behind those bushes, so you can get a little close up to those bushes. You can leave a little bit of white on the top of those bushes because they're little highlights. Now that we have the roof, we can start to focus in on a little bit of more of the fun, which is the lighthouse. And I'm going to take some, I think what I want to do for this lighthouse is actually use a little bit of Payne's Gray. And be careful when you use Payne's Gray because a lot can go very far. So you want to dilute the Payne's Gray with a lot of water just to get a subtle touch of it along this edge. And go in there and make your straight edge for your lighthouse. And when this dries, you'll have a nice gray. And Payne's Gray tends to be a lot more blue or indigo, and it's one of my favorite grays to use. I don't like a typical black. The Payne's Gray just adds a little touch of that blue, and it's soft on the eye. But what's great is it also can be very dark. I'm just going to go back and forth and create a little bit of that cylinder look with this lighthouse. So you're going to want to have the edges darker and come lighter as you come in. I'm going to work back and forth, keeping the edges a lot darker. And this is a little underhang, so there's going to be shadow along that underhang. Don't bring too much water into this, otherwise it might splatter everywhere and dry kind of weird. I'm just using a little bit of this paint. I'm just working back and forth, and as I start on the edge, I pull the paint out towards the center, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the other side and pull the paint back the other way, so you'll have a nice gradient. And this is we're going to make the roof of this lighthouse. And again, I'm just continually using the Payne's Gray. I'm not mixing any other colors with this so we can use a little bit more for this roof because it's going to be a lot darker. And right now I'm just kind of using some of the Payne's Gray for a little bit of the shadows on the, they have these little underhangs. And now I'm going to make a little spire on top. And now that sky has dried completely, where I can just paint over this and it's not going to blend. Now that the lighthouse has dried a little bit more, because I haven't used too much water, I'm going to shade in these sides a little bit more. You're just going to want to continually work back and forth. Now for some fun, I'm going to bring in some, I think this is a Naples yellow. It's a very subtle yellow. Just so we don't make this lighthouse too gray. We're going to give it a little bit of color because sun is hitting it. And with sunlight at an evening, we're going to have almost like a golden hour. And I'm going to use some of that Naples yellow to bring into this house, just because it's a part of this lighthouse. Leave a little bit of white between the roof and the windows maybe. Maybe there's a door. You can either paint a door there or you can leave it white. I like it as highlights. I like white doors. They're cool. So now that we have our lighthouse and our home ready, we're going to come in here and we're going to paint a palm tree. And I'm just using a 2-liner brush. These brushes are from Princeton. They're synthetic sable. You can pick them up pretty much anywhere, any art store near your home. Just mixing up some different greens and shades of green to bring into this palm tree. And with this liner brush, it's very nice because it's very thin at the end and holds a lot of the paint, but it gives you very thin lines. And that's kind of what you want to do with some of these smaller pieces. You want to use some of these smaller brushes just to come in here and give it a little bit of detail and create some of these palm leaves coming out. And I'm just working back and forth, bringing different colors in. I'm also bringing some raw sienna, and I also brought in some of that gold because so much of that gold has been used in this piece. We want it to kind of keep that gold there because that's what that sun is hitting. That's what we're getting those colors from. I'm using some of this oxide of chromium. Another one of my favorite colors to bring in. I'm using all these shades of green and brown because there's so many colors in a palm tree. You can bring in any shades of green that you have, but make sure that you keep them earthy. You want to have an earthy tone with this palm tree, and not too yellow or light yellow, or you want it more brown or a dark shade of green like a sap green. Now I'm just coming in here because there's a lot of water in here. I can bring some other colors like that quinacridone gold and just touch in the center there, and it's just gonna blend all together when it dries. And also I'm just bringing in some of this raw sienna and making that palm part brown. And you just bring it all the way down behind those bushes. And there you have it. Just if you can want to continue working on it and do some subtle details in here, you're more than welcome to. You could walk away, come back to it later, or you can just keep working. If you do plan to keep on bringing in more details, I'm going to show you you can bring in more of this Payne's gray into this lighthouse for some of that detail. And you have to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more careful, because now we're working with darker shades of shades within this piece, and you don't want to do all this work without being patient. And this is a part where you just want to be more delicate with your time, more delicate with your paint. And when I do these lines, you just have to go after it. You have to be certain and make that line. Once you make these lines with this dark paint, there's no turning back. You have to just keep going for it. And if you mess up a line, you don't want to necessarily try to fix it. It's fine to have some of those subtle mistakes. It brings character into your painting. So right now I'm just going to make some windows with some of this Payne's gray. And sometimes the liner brush doesn't work out for these windows, so I'm just going to switch to I have a synthetic it's a 5/0, and it's super tiny, just to get into these tiny windows. I'm going to use this Payne's gray with this tiny round synthetic sable brush. I'm also going to make a door down here. And I'm going to come back up into this roof part because it should be dark. I'm going to do some of these little ledges with some more shade of Payne's gray, and just all of this shading on the lighthouse is going to make it pop a lot more. I know I said you can either walk away from it or you can continue with these details, but if you do continue with these details, it is going to bring that lighthouse out a lot more from just walking away. And I'm going to bring in some little highlights on this roof now that it's dried. I'm going to bring in some cadmium yellow and some Naples yellow, just because that roof has a little bit of that Spanish style that isn't all the same color, but has these little highlights. And these are the subtle details that can really bring out the focused part of your painting, which is, in this, it's the lighthouse. And you can always keep going with more detail in this. You can bring in a little bush on the side. And I decided to just bring in a little bit of a bush on this side because, well, it's in our photo. So I wanted to grab some of that gold, some of the raw sienna, just push it along that side. And well, there you have it. We had some fun. We zenned out. We painted a lighthouse together. And if you want to post this to your Instagram or to your website, I would love to see it. You can tag me at Boelter Design Co. and hopefully I can come across it and give you a like and give you a shout out, because I always love seeing when people create something that I've helped inspire. For any more inspiration, please visit my Instagram at Boelter Design Co. and follow me here on YouTube for more videos. Thank you all so much for watching. Go have yourself an amazing day and go create something special.